out to Cape Palmas, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Boakai, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is our show, The Hour of Faith. Today, we're going to be looking at part 2 of our discussion on the highly debated, the controversial topics in Islam. Today is part 2, and in part 2, we're going to be talking about human rights and the role of women in Islam. And guess what? We're also going to talk about blasphemy. What is it? And what are the punishments for blasphemy? What does it even mean to blaspheme? We're going to be talking about that today. I have the Islamic scholar, Boakai Dukuly, and also Imam Turay will be here. Welcome, Mr. Dukuly.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you know, they say when you want to buy pencil, you go to the grocery, right? You go to the stationery store. You want to buy your bread and butter, you go to the grocery. You want to buy, clothes. So if you want discussion, the kind of discussion that can make people say, huh? You come right here, Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Nobody else can hold the kind of discussion we hold. The highly debated topics in Islam, my guests, or the presenters here, Imam Jeneka Muhammad Turay. Welcome, Imam.
Thank you very much.
And also the Islamic scholar from the Harvard of Islamic Study, Boakai Dukuly. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. My pleasure.
This is day 2 of our topic. This is part 2. The last time, we were here, we discussed Sharia and we talk about polygamy. So before we even start, let's kind of review and feedback. From the first show, I know people call you. So let me get your feedback from the first show, what you heard, what people are saying, and then a kind of a summary too, so that those who didn't watch it can get a head start. Let me start with you, Mr. Dukuly.
Yeah, I think I was pretty impressed that the first feedback I got, it was from a non-Muslim Liberian friend of mine who said that he thinks that the show was a very eye-opening for him, and there are things that he learned that he did not know. Um, One of the specific things that he told me was that um, when we talk about the penal code of Islam and Sharia, and he was also impressed with the fact that there are some areas of Sharia that is debatable and open to different opinions. He thought that was very educating for him. He didn't know that exists, and simply because people's only source of these kind of information is either the media, or somewhere from somebody who is on the opposite side. And so to listen to people like us and 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 learn that some of these preconceived notion that they have of Islam were not true. He said to me that was very eye-opening, and so I thought that was very impressive to have learned that.
Thank you. Let me go to Imam Turay.
Yeah, Dennis. The last week show that we discussed, Muslim friends and non-Muslim alike contacted me after witnessing it, and they were very much impressed, as the brother just made mention. It was an eye-opening, especially for non-Muslims. They appreciated it, and they are waiting or looking forward to listen to more. It was very good.
Okay, good. And then from the Muslim side, are you getting the feedback that, hey, that thing you're not supposed to talk it?
Not at all. Not at all.
So people of the Islamic faith want this to be out there, so that more people get the clarity that they need.
Yes, I think. I mean, I would say there was some, one other person did mention something like that, but the issue that he was arguing about is one of those is one of those issues that are open, that are even within the Islam, within the context of Islam itself, is debatable, and opinions are divided on it. And so people, and it was about polygamy actually, and so it's something that I can accept. I mean, that's his opinion. And then remember, everything we are talking about here, from last week to even what we're going to talk about today, there are different camps, or there are different school of thought that interpret the same topics in different ways, and people can differ in terms of their understanding. But usually, when you are ascribing to these ideas, there's something called an ijma, which is the majority of scholars usually go on one side, and minority of scholars go on one side. And so usually, as much as they are debatable, but the opinions and the judgment that have been rendered about these issues are pretty clear and straightforward. So it is left with the individual to now evaluate their own understanding of the matter.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Hour of Faith. We are going to be discussing part 2 of our topic, highly debated topics in Islam. And the first thing we want to talk about is human rights, right? Human rights. And we're talking this because a lot of people from the outside will look at it and say, oh, Islam doesn't do this, Islam doesn't do that, right? So when it comes to equality, the right to life and dignity, the freedom of belief, justice and due process, these kind of things, what does, let's discuss. And I'm encouraging all our listeners, even those that will listen later, that will watch the show later, we want your feedback, positive feedback, not confrontation. There are some people, and I'm happy that since we started doing this, these kind of confrontations are going down. Come to the topic, come to the discussion with an open mind, ask questions, be respectful, and let's discuss like adults and like intellectuals, the people who want to know. Islam and human rights. That's the broad topic, Mr. Imam. I want you to give it a first start. What is it?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. The topic on discussion, human rights in Islam, is a very important one, and its importance actually then is gonna be well emphasized. But it's like we confine the topic. We say human rights in Islam. So we are discussing it from the Islamic perspective more.
Correct. Yeah.
Islam as a religion recognizes the fundamental rights of every human being, Muslim or non-Muslim. But that right is rented into the belief of the one true God. That is the source of the Islamic fundamental about human rights. And key to that, the discussion underlined the right to life, that's one, every human being, be it a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew, Christian, an atheist, everyone has the right to live. No one has the right to take a life of any other person. We have the right for freedom. Of course, that is universal. And everyone, according to Islam, has the right to justice. The freedom, justice, owning of property, and the right of establishing to fight against tyranny, specifically in Islam. Islam, to just a little bit dwell on the right to fight, to struggle against tyranny, any form of tyranny, is a responsibility given to Muslims by the religion called Islam. And we are as well as Muslims having the freedom to thought, religion, association, under the framework of Islam principle. So no one has the right to curtail these fundamental rights from any human being. But generally speaking, Dennis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all of us equal, be it a white, a black, or whatever color you found yourself, whatever religion you found yourself to be in, social, political division, it really doesn't matter. We are all equally created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says in the Quran, He created us from one single soul, that is Adam, and his wife, Eve, Hawa. And from the both of them spring up many human beings today we see. So we all, no matter what happens, came from one soul, that is Adam and Eve. And generally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He has honored. In Surah Al-Israel, He says, وَلَقَدْ قَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحْمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. I have honored the children of Adam, generally. It's not limited to Muslim, Christian, Jews, or no other specific person. All human beings are created equal. And Allah is telling you, we are all honored in His sight above any other creation. So being honored, being created from one single soul, our diversity of tongue, our diversity of color, according to He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and amongst the signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and amongst the signs of God, of Allah, is the diversity of tongue. Probably you speak Kru, I speak Gio, the other one speak Mandingo, the other one speak Vai, the other one, different tribes and different colors. Indeed, are signs for those who reflect. So no matter what happens, no matter where you find yourself to be it in faith, be it in geographical background, be it in your color, we all are one particular people, and we all have these fundamental rights. And no one, absolutely, no one is allowed to violate these rights from us. Fortunately for Islam, BAD, the Magna Carta that everybody talked about, human rights, came out 600 years after Islam. And in those laws, we know most of the laws, the human rights that we find today, evolved from Islam. If you look in Surah 547, please, if you can just place it on the board, Surah 5, verse 47, that's Quran 5:47, Quran 6:44 to 45, all the way to 47. Idea, Dennis?
Yeah, Surah 5:46 and 47, or which one? 45?
Mhm. All right, if you can get out, then let's just go ahead. The rights we talked about, the Quran mentioned one, basically to life, that anyone who takes away a single soul, it is as though you've taken the soul of everyone. Man qatala nafsan فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Anyone who takes away a single soul, it is as though you've taken the soul of the entire humanity. In Surah 5:33, in Surah 6:151, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not take away life, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Do not take any innocent soul, meaning do not kill, do not destroy a life or a soul that Allah Himself forbids, except with a just cause. And even that just cause is not just decided by an individual. It has to be established, connecting it back to what we discussed last week, the penal code, into a jurisdiction, into a court being actually carried on by the leadership, meaning the Islamic leadership. So in a nutshell, Islam forbids the taking away of a single life. So all of us as human beings, we are supposed to protect lives, property, no matter who that life belongs to. It doesn't have to be just Muslim. Thank you.
Right. And the verse you were is Surah 45:45, right?
Yeah.
The one that talk about eye for eye.
Yeah.
Right. It reads, and we ordain for them therein a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a nose for a nose, an ear for an ear, a tooth for a tooth, and for wounds is legal retribution.
Go ahead.
But whoever gives up his right has charity, it is an expiation for him. And whoever does not judge for what Allah has revealed, then it is those who are the wrongdoers.
Yes. An eye for an eye, meaning if it is done deliberately, willingly, it's not mistakenly. A life for a life is deliberate. That's why Islam comes in. The Islamic jurisprudence comes in to make sure that what you did, a payback should be. But in the nutshell, Islam also said the one that is responsible or steers the affair, they were killed in those aspects, and they forget that is the best one. So it means even paying back does not take precedence over forgiving. Forgiveness is encouraged. That's what I want to learn.
So before I go to Mr. Dukuly, how does Islam protect human rights? What are some of the practical ways?
I didn't get your question well.
How does Islam promote human rights?
What does what?
How does Islam promote human rights in a more practical way? What are some of the things you do to say, yes, this one is for the promotion of human rights?
As I was saying, human right involves from Islam. That's the first and foremost. And that right starts from your very self. Not leave others out. You have rights on your own. Your very bodily part has right. Every part of you has right, and it must be protected. Right? your eyes, your mouth, your private parts, even your thought. These are all rights. And we need to struggle, and this is where jihad comes in. We need to struggle and strive to make sure that we look on these rights, not to violate it against ourselves.
Thank
And if
you.
we can be so much passionate about ourselves, Dennis, maintaining these human rights, how much about the others? Islam gives you the right to protect and to defend. Even your neighbor has right over you, no matter who. And it is your responsibility to make sure that these rights are preserved in any aspect and form.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Dukuly. Quran 5:32. Whoever kills a soul is as if he had slain mankind entirely. These are, and let me talk about another one that say, also for human right, Islam, Quran 2, it says, let there be no compulsion, because you violate somebody's right when you compel them to do what they don't want to do.
Of course.
So the Quran is saying, let there be no compulsion in religion. These are, so first let me hear your thoughts on human rights, or Mr. Dukuly, and how does the Quran promote or protect human rights? And if there's a difference between what the Quran is saying and actually what is being practiced. Because we are human beings, we always do something else. On mute, please.
Thank you, Dennis. You know, when you talk about human right in Islam, it's probably the area of Islam where a lot of what Islam considers rights ordained by God Himself in the Holy Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad is human right, where it aligned with the Western, Judeo-Christian idea of human right. And on top of those rights is the right to life, and how each and every human being is entitled to their life and live their life in dignity and respect, as well as to the right to own property and their right to justice, as well as freedom of expression and religion and protection from arbitrary imprisonment. All the things that you read about human rights, these are all enshrined in the Islamic code. And this is where, when we talk about divine Sharia, these are some of the areas that the divine Sharia comes in, because some of these things are talked about, but they are not spelled out in a detail that some consider is sufficient enough. But I can tell you that one of the mistakes people make is that people always compare how various so-called Islamic governments treat their citizens, and based on those treatments, they relate those treatments to Islam. Well, I can tell you that most of the so-called Islamic countries that claim to have Islamic Sharia laws, they are the most violators of Islamic human rights. And so it would be a mistake to evaluate human rights in Islam based on how these people are treated. So one of the things that you need to look at, you look at the teachings, and by the teachings I mean the Quran and Hadith. What do these two sources from which Islamic Sharia must emanate and must be practiced? And so if you evaluate it from those perspectives, you find that the Islamic
we can give you a break. Let me.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
You can find that really it's not what people think. And I really like something you said in the onset when you said that people should come to these things with an open mind, meaning come to these things and be prepared to be convinced. you know. And so, with that being said, I mean, the verse is very clear where it says, if anyone takes one life, it's almost like you have taken the entire humanity. What that says, literally, it tells you the value and importance of life and how a life must be preserved. Now, like anything else, some of these verses, they are open to multiple interpretations where the fundamentalists will interpret it one way, and people who are not as fundamentalists as they would interpret it differently. And of course, there will be those who see no gray area in anything. And so, and sometimes these things are in our own mind. It might be justified, but just because it's justified in their mind, it doesn't mean it's right. And I can tell you, I always tell my friends when we're having conversation, if you remember the massacre that was caused by James Jones in Guyana, James Jones, everything he was talking about, all his argument was based from the Bible. His disciples, his followers, he was convincing them from the Bible. Does that make it right? Absolutely not. And Islam is not any different from those sort of practices. We saw horrendous things being done in the name of Islam and justified by some Quranic verses. Again, somebody can interpret things in a way that justify their action. Does that make it right? Absolutely not. That doesn't make it right. And so when we talk about, one of the famous pact in Islam that a lot of scholars refer to is the pact of we call it As-Sulhul Hudaybiyah, the Pact of Hudaybiyah. And this pact is an example of international diplomacy. In this pact, this pact was signed between Prophet Muhammad and the people he was fighting against. And one of the conditions of that pact was that there's going to be no aggression. Prophet Muhammad is not going to be allowed to come to perform the pilgrimage that very year. He's not going to be called prophet, and all of the conditions that were contained in that pact, Prophet Muhammad respected them. But Prophet Muhammad was, when he was signing that pact, he was looking at the long-term benefits of what that pact is going to yield. And one of the long-term benefit of that particular pact is me sitting here today in the year 2025. I'm from West Africa. I was born in West Africa. I grew up in West Africa, and I'm a Muslim. Haven't been to the Middle East where the Islam came from, and I became Muslim. My parents were Muslim, my grandparents. These were some of the objectives that Prophet Muhammad, if we uphold the pact that we have signed, we live up to even though the terms in the eyes of many of his companions, the terms are pretty bad for Muslims. But because he was a visionary, because his objectives was to spread this Islam as wide and far as possible, he accepted. And so over time, people saw, oh my Lord, he has lived up to the agreement. So it was them coming out to Prophet Muhammad in drove, accepting Islam in a way that nobody had anticipated, because the good deeds, because he followed through what he said he would follow through. And so international diplomacy, and I'm talking about 1400 years ago, and that preceded all the things you talk about diplomacy and why not. But again, people's mistake that they always make is that they compare one thing that is happening in one Islamic country and say, oh, but it's happening here. How can you say this when it's happening in that country? That country is not Islam. It doesn't necessarily, because they call themselves Muslim, that doesn't necessarily mean they are following the Islamic teachings. I can tell you, I attended Al-Azhar. I was in Egypt for 10 years. There were lots of things that I saw there that were not Islamic. And yet they profess to be Muslims. They profess to be countries that follow the Islamic teachings. Right? I mean, they can say anything, and the government can say anything, and the government can decide anything. So when you read these things that, oh, Islam say you have the right to life, property, justice, freedom and expression, freedom of expression and religion, it sounds as if you are reading something from the human rights organization or whatever you want to call it. But these are rights that are enshrined 1400 years ago, before the Human Rights Watch existed. But again, the implementation of these rights and the way and by whom sometimes can be debatable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist in Islam.
And that's what I want also go into to see where the issue is coming from. So, for instance, Allah talk about equality before God, and it says all human beings are equal in the sight of God, regardless of race, ethnicity, or social status.
Yes,
right. That is
and the bar there is that in the sight of Allah, the best among you is the most pious. It's as simple as that. Right. And so, and that's one of the reasons why you see in Islam there's no hierarchy, and there's no hierarchy in any form. Now,
so I'm coming to my question. So Quran says, "O mankind, we created you from a single soul or a single pair of a male and female." Quran 49:13.
Yes.
And when they talk about the respect for human lives, like I read before, whoever kills a soul, it is as if he has slain the entire world, right?
Yes.
And then when it comes to the freedom to believe, right? Because we're talking human rights here.
Yes.
Quran addresses that. It says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion."
Yes. Yes.
And then when it comes to justice and due process, the Quran also addresses that. He said, "Indeed, Allah commands you to render trust to whom they are due, and when you judge between people, to judge with justice."
Yes, it's a yes.
So where you think, and you are saying, hey, these things are in the Quran, but so when you see somebody doing it, it's not Quran. What are some of the examples? Okay, because if somebody is doing it and you don't call it out, we just think you agree with that person.
Yes, and that is the tragedy, Dennis, because and I cited an example of like in Egypt, or if you go to Saudi Arabia, or if you go to Sudan, where they claim to be implementing Sharia, and in that same country, you are not allowed to criticize the government. So what is? I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say on the one hand, I'm implementing Islamic Sharia, and on the other hand, you don't tolerate criticism. So and again, actually, that goes to another realm that I would refer to as political Islam. And political Islam is what that have been creating all these unnecessary headaches for people who want to say Islam is just, because they always conflict the political Islam with the regular Islam. And no, you cannot divorce politics from Islam. But the way you implement it, especially when you say, this is a country that is going to live by the Islamic Sharia law. I mean, people are allowed to say how they feel about anything, for that matter. Now, people will craft laws that make it a crime to say certain things because, I mean, they are in power. They want to control. They want to maintain that power, and for so doing, they will craft any law that protect them in power. Because you see, then the problem is some of these things came out when there was majority Muslim in that part of the world, but these were laws that were universal in terms of its implementation. And so if you take one country as an example and something they've done, like for example in Saudi Arabia, their interpretation of a lot of the things that they do might vastly differ from how that same issue, that same verse is interpreted, say, in Egypt, for example. Even though they're both reading the same text, but they're interpreting it differently. And that's where you have the divine Sharia that we spoke about last week.
Thank you. Imam, we see the Quran is very clear on these things. So where do you think the problem is coming from? Is it people, the execution, the implementation? Is it that other Muslims are either silent about it, they acquiesce, or is it the acquiescence that making people to think, well, this is what Islam is? Or is it that, even though they are wrong, but we got to be quiet because we are in solidarity with fellow Muslims. Where the problems coming from here?
Well, I think the brother just outlined some of it. There's a former statement from one of my former teachers who always says, it's better to know the religion called Islam before knowing Muslims. Because sometimes our activities that we do, our attitude really don't commensurate with the teachings and principles of Islam. So the problem is, if you see or live in an Islamic community or in a community where Muslims are, whether majority or not, for like 10 years, the way you see they talk to each other, they greet each other, they eat together, their marriages, their prayer. So basically, the way you see their life for 10 years, if you don't know absolutely anything about Islam, automatically you will consider that life to be Islam, right?
Yeah.
That is a major problem. And unfortunately, most of what we see today, like 65% or 60%, is just the cultural practice. It doesn't matter where, in Africa, in Saudi, and so on. Most of what we see is culture. So if you see that culture, and all these verses have been outlined in Islam, compared to those cultures, those practices that we are saying, automatically you see, there will always be a doubt in the mind. But this is what people say, the Quran says, and this is what I've seen people doing. So that is a major problem. Those who hold onto it, those are the people expect to execute the way it's supposed to be, to live the way Islam teaches. Unfortunately, we are the ones who are living the other way and doing different things, and most of which is backed by culture.
I was studying names, Liberian names, and I got to the Mandingo ethnic group, and most of the names are, even when somebody is a Muslim today, the name you take on is Arab name or name from Saudi Arabia, right? So you have your name. So how do you separate now the culture you talk about, because the culture that we look at and we think that's Muslim or that's Islam, how do you separate the culture and the religion if people are more and more immersing themselves into the culture and probably not the religion? And my example is just the names that people give, right?
Yeah, there is it's not every culture that Islam is against. There are positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the one you just made mention of. If my name was Alex, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and if I were to embrace Islam from Christianity or different faith and embrace Islam, most of the people you see them using Arab names.
Right.
But let me be very frank with you. Most of these names were not Islamic names. They were
Right.
Arab traditional names.
Exactly. That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah,
and
they're
that's the
Arab
name
traditional names.
That's the
And
name you
due
go to
to-
when you accept Islam.
Yeah, due to ignorance, because I will just put it straight to that. Because they are Arab names, people assume these names are Islamic names. While it is true, some of the names are Islamic, but most of it are Arab cultural names. They are not Islamic names. So if you accept it,
But before you continue, is there anything called Islamic name, in fact?
yeah, for example, Muhammad,
Maybe he's frozen now.
Yeah, right. Because it's somebody word, right? And I was talking to somebody, I said, is there any name called biblical name? Or is it because that name was in the Bible? Because the culture, the people there were from that culture.
names,
So is there-
names that probably will be understood to be biblical or Islamic will be the name of the prophets and messengers. Like
and those people
Muhammad.
took the names based on their culture. So that was if you were in Labra, I would say that their tribal names.
There are some names that were given by God himself directly.
Okay. And
Yes.
God did not want to speak different language, so he gave them the name based on the language they spoke.
On their language they understand.
Right. So I will argue
Let
that
me give you
there's
a
nothing
classical
called
example.
Islamic-
I
Okay.
speaking here today,
Mhm.
the name is Muhammad. That's is common in Islam. That's the prophet name. Mean the praised one. The praised one. That's the name God gave his prophet. What our name is still called Jeneka. Huh?
A divine name.
Yes, that's how the I interpret it. That name is like if you say a man from Jene.
Yeah,
Right.
Because
Jeneka.
my ancestry has a link with Jene Timbuktu. When my grandfather came from Mali, settled from Sierra Leone, from there, Liberia, gave birth to my grandfather. My grandfather born my father, and his name was Jeneka in the first place. He came from Jene. So, I mean, on the basis of that, that's cultural line. The name is just attached. It's not a real name to say this is religious name. No. To be recognized as the Quran says. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَكَبَائِرَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. I make you tribes and nations so that you may know each other. But the underlying button there is إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The best amongst you is the one who fears Allah. So name really doesn't matter.
Right.
Somebody can be called Muhammad and they are the best goer of the nightclub. The Muhammad doesn't help them, right? Somebody can be called Alex and they are the best Christians. They are the best Muslim, right? It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
I guess one of the point I would like to emphasize here is if you were called Alexander and you convert to Islam, Islam doesn't compel you to change your name to Muhammad because you converted to Islam. No, there's no creed there that asks you to change your name to Muhammad because you have converted to Islam. No. And so again, the names that we refer to as Islamic names are names of prophets, some of whom are mentioned in the Quran, and others they were not mentioned in the Quran, but they were prominent in Islam. You know, like my name, Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is the companion of Prophet Muhammad. He was the second Caliph of Islam. And so, and there are other names like that. And there are other names that are purely Arab names. They are not Islamic names. Meaning you can find an Arab Christian who have those names and Muslim Christian with the same names. Absolutely nothing to do with the religion. And again, it is sometimes in some.
Let me stop you right there. So
Yes.
Abu Bakr,
Let me just inject. He just brought something from my mind. Let me just inject something little about his own name.
Right.
The name here, Abu Bakr, is not a name. His real name was Abdullah ibn Abi Quhafa. The name Abu Bakr meaning father of a virgin. Abu Bakr, father of a virgin. Because the Prophet married his daughter, Aisha, when she was nothing. So, I mean, if assuming that I was considering that name to be an Islamic name because one of the greatest companions of the Prophet name is Abu Bakr, and I'll be on the wrong path, right?
And that's why I believe there is no name like
Yes.
Islamic name, there is no name like biblical name. Because
Okay, I think we are confusing one thing here.
Abu Bakr, which language is that?
It's
Father
Arabic.
of Arabic. So that's what I'm saying.
The
There is
virgin is
nothing
in
like-
Arabic is called Bakr,
Okay.
and father is Ab or Walid. There are so many names anyway because Arabic is open. Was it Abu Bakr, the father of a virgin, which it was a name that he boasts of. Why? Because Islam tells you when you raise a girl child in Islam, educated them, and gave them to a faithful Muslim, it's another pathway to paradise.
I think one thing you guys are conflicting here, the meaning of the name doesn't really matter in this context, but rather the name, whatever we call it, Abu Bakr. We know Abu Bakr is Abdullah, whoever he's called, but the name Abu Bakr is not. Even though it's the name of the second Khalifa, nobody else was called Abu Bakr. Okay, and unless until after he was called Abu Bakr, I guess you see what I'm saying. So yes, his name is Abdullah, but what we call in Arabic is called kunya. Sometimes the attribute something to your name. Let's say if you were let's say a shepherd, they will say Dennis the shepherd, and then that becomes your name. Now, Now that's got that
if you yes, Yedi, Yamade, all those things, Yaman,
exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want us to deviate too far, right? What I was saying is, because if the culture, if people are practicing culture more than even Islam, and because of the culture of what we see is what we believe to be Islam, those of us outside who are non-Muslim, right?
Exactly.
So it's like Muslim too are helping to solidify that kind of belief. Because if you become Muslim today and the only name you think fit to really solidify and make you Muslim is to take on Arabic name, then you are reinforcing that kind of belief. That's what I was getting at when I brought in the name business. So, having said that, as we talk about human rights, because the Quran is, clearly state this thing of human rights. So why are Muslim countries and why are you quiet if other people are doing this thing? Is it because you don't want to talk against another Muslim, then you kind of betray them? Or because it appears that whatever is done in Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or South or Sudan is like we don't hear the outcry against it from imams and Islamic scholars like you. I think that's one of the problems, don't you think? Abu Bakr.
Actually, people do. A lot of people do. People complain. People talk about it. But I mean, if I'm going to be speaking against what is happening in Sudan, and not in Sudan, there's only so much I can do. But with that said, I mean, people have been critical of Sudan. People have been critical of Saudi Arabia. People have been critical of all these places, particularly when it comes to human rights. And so, yeah, people are critical. People are speaking against it. They might not be as amplified as people expected, but they do speak. Myself being one of those, I mean, whenever I have the opportunity, I do speak, and I do try to highlight some of these, ill practices that is done in the name of Islam. But I mean, again, I'm one individual, and the government of Saudi, the government of Sudan, the government of all these places, they have a well-funded machinery that is there to come after people like myself and others who are speaking against them. But that doesn't stop. There are people who speak against these practices, Dennis.
So they scare you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm sitting here in Canada. I can say whatever I want. But don't diminish. The power of the social media is extremely important. So people are talking against these things. People are talking against them. People are aligning themselves with groups that are fighting these things in those countries. And I can tell you, in London, there is a significant presence of opposition to Saudi and Saudi governments. And some of these groups are, they have been targeted. They speak against the Saudis. They speak against the practices of some of the things the Saudi government does against its own people. And so people are not quiet, and people are speaking. One of the things that the United Arab Emirates has, let's say, they monitor people's social media posting. So if you have said something about the United Arab Emirates 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you happen to apply to go there for visa, you get there, you could actually be prosecuted for that, in the United Arab Emirates. And I'm sure there are many other countries in the region that have similar laws, but that doesn't quiet out people to speak against them. That doesn't stop people from saying their minds.
Thank you, Imam. Let's conclude on this subject, and you can ask us.
Just what the brother made mention of, people are speaking, people are writing. But the fear is those of the Muslim leaders in those Arab countries or Muslim countries, whenever you speak against them, I mean, they are not following the Islamic human rights principles. They are looking at defending or fencing their authority. And the cheapest of all examples I can give you, we all saw how Jamal Khashoggi died because of speaking against the ills, right? Yeah. And he was not even killed in his own home country, but rather in Turkey. So in a nutshell, people are speaking. People are writing and people remaining silent because these are the three things that the Holy Prophet talked about. He said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُ مِنْكُمْ شَرًّا, anyone sees anything wrong amongst you in the Islamic community, in the Islamic Ummah, فَلْيُغَيِّرُوهُ, try, make every effort to change it. The first one, بِيَدِهِ, with your hand, write against it. Do everything, publish articles, whatever you can do, use social media. If there's no way that they will listen or read your writing or the message goes through, with your mouth, talk against it. You need to speak against it. It's not your choice. And after you should have written, you should have spoken. The message is not still going. How of your qalbi? Make sure that your heart is against that thing and you refrain from it. Just forget about it. I think that's where maybe I may say most of the Muslims probably have decided to take. But you have to try the first to write against, speak against. If it's not making any impact, then make your intention, Allah, you know what is happening, I'm not part of it. And I detest it, I condemn it by your word. And that's it.
Which is the leader of the three commands.
That takes us to the role of women. This topic, because especially men, most religions are men at the head, and men like women. So everything, they want to suppress women as a form of control, But before I begin the topic, and I want Abu Bakr to start, we'll call you Abu Bakr now. Whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, will surely give them their reward. According to the Quran, both male and female, you are all equal before God. Abu Bakr, is that true? And how is that manifested in the practice of Islam?
Well, it is true. And so, again, the women in Islam, just so you know how women is respected and how women is considered, there is a full chapter in the Quran that is named after women, and the chapter is called the Women. And in this chapter, it speaks mostly about how Islam view Muslim women, their role and things they have done, and how we are to respect them, be it mothers, sisters, or daughters. And so you just put on the verse there where it says, it doesn't matter men or women, both will be rewarded for whatever they do equally. Again, this is all black and white when it comes to Islam, except where people let their tradition overshadow the teachings of Islam. I said something somewhere to some people, and they were shocked to have heard that, which is, if a man marries a woman in Islam, and this woman works, or he or she is wealthy, this woman is under absolutely no obligation to spend a penny of her money, of her wealth, on that family. And this person said to me, really? I said, yeah, I mean, according to Islam, according to the Islamic teaching, if a woman chooses to spend on her household, that's her choice. But Islamically speaking, she is under no obligation. It is the full responsibility of the husband to provide the needs of this lady and her children. And so women are, there is a hadith, it's now been deemed as a weak hadith, but the hadith says the heavens are underneath the feet of the mothers. And the essence of this hadith is to emphasize the importance of mothers in Islam, the importance of women in Islam, the importance of females in Islam. And so when the comments are given, usually either through the Quran verses or through the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, it says men and women. One example of that is that seeking knowledge is an obligation on Muslim men and Muslim women to tell you that they are equal, except in the sight of Allah, where He evaluates who is better and who is most pious. Now, with that said, again, there are rules, there are spheres where women are considered superior, and there are spheres where men are considered superior. That does not in any way suggest that women are better than men, nor men are better than women. Instead, it's the role that each play in his or her own sphere that gives him or her the superiority in that area. And one such area is the household, where mothers are, as a matter of fact, we refer to them in Arabic as women that raise generations. In other words, the upbringing of the children by the wives, by the women in the household, they should be recognized for that role of bringing up good generations of children. And so one such woman that is highly spoken of in Islam and in the Quran is Mary, which is, we know in Arabic we call her Maryam, to the point where there is a chapter in the Quran that is named after her, the chapter of Maryam, or Surah to Maryam. And so these are all some aspects of women, how women are respected in Islam and how women are regarded in Islam. And so I just touched on a few aspects of how women are considered. Now, if you go to the Quran and see how Quran describe in practical terms how women should be looked at, or how women should behave, how women should carry themselves, in the end, it all boils down to what Islam referred to as modesty. And even that modesty, in my opinion, and the way some scholars have interpreted it, it's good. It makes you a good Muslim. If you don't do it, it doesn't make you a bad Muslim, you know. And so the dress code that is ascribed to women, it's not one that if you don't do it, then you're not a Muslim or you're not a good Muslim. No, absolutely not. And I know others might differ in this, but again, the overwhelming majority of scholars have come to say, yes, it's something that is acceptable, it's good. But if you don't, it doesn't mean that you are any less Muslim. So, you know, and there's a very, very tiny minority of scholars who goes to the extent of, you know, women covering their entire body. You know, sometimes you see them all black, and you know, sometimes only the eyes you see. And we know that it is a very tiny minority of scholars who go that direction. But again, you know, for the non-Muslim who sees this, they will attribute it to Islam without having to know any of what I just said prior to this. And so women are considered extremely valued in Islam. They are accorded such respect both in the tradition of Islam, both in the Quran, as well as in the teachings and the tradition of Prophet Muhammad. Now, again, I always say here, the way certain group interprets certain verses doesn't make that interpretation, you know, superior to the way somebody like myself will interpret it, or somebody who considers themselves a moderate Muslim or liberal Muslim will interpret it. So really, I can emphasize enough how much Islam respects women and the role they play in Islam. Then I can cite to you many examples of women, courageous women in Islam, who did a lot for Islam, and those roles were recognized for such. And so, again, I will refer back to what you said earlier. Look, people should come to these debates. People should come to these things with open mindedness. They should come to be prepared to be convinced. You know, there are a lot of things that people say about Islam and women that are not true. You know, I said something here last week about women. I said women, if women are getting, if they are consummating a marriage, the woman has the right to say, I am going to let this marriage dissolve if you are going to be married a second wife, over me. So there are many other examples that I can cite in due time as we talk about women in Islam.
All right. One of the things that is a lot of people debate is this area of have two women equal one man, right? In witnesses. The way Imam looking at me is like, what are you talking about? Like the verse that says, and bring to witness two witnesses from among your men. And if there are not two men, then a man and two women from those whom you accept as witnesses, so that if one of the women errs, the other can remind her. So you needed two men, but if you don't have two men, bring one man and two women. So the way people understand it is two women equal one man. Abu Bakr, I want you to end with that.
Yes, and again, that is a direct commandment in the Quran, and we said men and women are equal, but the Almighty, who knows our capacity and the capacity of men and women, He ordered that, and so I mean, we do not question Allah's command, we do not question Allah's will, but because He knows better the capacity of men as well as the capacity of women, and so that's how He ordered, and so that does not in any way suggest that women are any less in terms of value than
the women can have errors. He says so that if one woman errs, the other can remind her. So women are more prone to such an error or will forget, and men will not.
And by the way, this witness thing here, there are categories, there are specific areas where these testimonies are considered to be what you just talked about. It's not in all cases, but there are specific cases where, again, like I said, we go by the divine nature of that order. And so, you could think that you are one thing, but the Creator who created you know your capacity better than you do about yourself. And so, I mean, that's one interpretation. There are other interpretations where people who want to look at it is to mean that women are less. There are people who would say that, but I will completely disagree with that, because the command of Islam, whatever Islam Quran says, is to better our lives, is to improve our lives. And so, in the jurisprudence, there are other areas where people say inheritance, where women get certain percentage of it, less than men, and different categories in different areas. And I think this is not any different. So because Allah said two women and one man, and one, so the other woman can remind the other, it is in certain area and certain cases where this will be acceptable, where it will be applicable. So it doesn't in any way suggest that women are any less than men, Dennis.
Imam Turay.
Yeah, to begin with, Mr. Dennis, let me just first give the basis. Before the advent of Islam, the Arabs were in the dark days of human life. They were doing things, whether for religion or not, that was condemned. They used to consider women before Islam as property. They used to ill-treat them to the extent they used to bury their own daughters when they gave birth to them. The Quran mentioned that. But on the day of Qiyamah, they will ask, وَإِذَا الْمَوْعُودَ سُئِلَ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَ. For which crime did you commit that your dad killed you? And the reason for which you are doing that then is, they used to engage in war. And those wars were fought by only men. Women were not fighting war. So their own mentality at that time was, and women to them were useless. So the Quran says, whenever any of them was given a glad tidings of a birth of a child, and that child is a female, they say that their face get darkened. Whether they will accept that child and ill-treat them, or they will bury them alive. So these were culture of the Arab before Islam, and Islam came to put them to the right place, to forbid it. Now, the question you asked Mr. Dukuly was that. The answer from my end is that before becoming a Muslim, you have to make a declaration, right? Like Christianity. Before you be a good Christian, I say good Christian, Christianity says you have to consider Christ as your Lord and personal Savior, right?
Right.
In Islam, you have to make the Shahada. And you bear testimony, you bear witness that there is no deity, word of worship except Allah alone, and Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. So in that article of faith, the man who is not different and a woman who is not different, just one declaration of faith. So that tells you that a man is not above a woman. That's one. The second thing is, Allah said, do good virtues. I did not create jinn kind and mankind except for my worship. And in that worship, He outlined in a long verse of the whole Quran. In Surah 33, verse 96, He named them. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات. A long virtues. A believing male and female. A worshipper who is a male or female. Those who stand at the middle of night and pray, male or female. Those who fast, male or female. And at the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I will give each and every one of them their due recompense or reward. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in Surah 99, verse 7, He said, فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى. Anyone who does an atom weight as a good, whether male or female, you will get it. And the same goes, وَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. Anyone who does an atom weight of an evil will get what? The reward. There is no different reward in Islam for virtues, and there is no extra punishment for vices. Everything remains the same. So, women and men are all equal in the sight of Allah, and the only difference will be piety. If a woman is more pious, is more godly, is more religious, is more compassionate than men, in the eyes of Allah, that man is better, that woman is better than the man, and vice versa. So in that, there is no difference. We are all equal. And this is what Allah said, I created all of you from one single soul, male and female, from two, we all sprang out. Thank you very much.
And I think two of those verses are the verses that counter anyone who says because women are asked to be two witnesses as opposed to one man, then it tells you that in that context, it doesn't make the woman any less than the man.
And the hadith of the Prophet mentioned about the pleasure of this word. Dennis, let me just add it quickly. The Prophet described this word. In Arabic, it's called dunya. He said, dunya mata'un. Wa khairu mata' az-zawja salihah. He said, dunya, this word is a play of pleasure. And the best of that pleasure is a righteous woman. A righteous woman. You just imagine. This place is a place of what? A pleasure for a short time. A protracted time. We are just passing through. But they say that pleasure, the best is what? A righteous woman. So if women were looking down upon, the Prophet would not have said that.
What does that mean? Does that mean you will marry a virgin in heaven? Is that what it is?
No. Your life will be better if you have a good wife.
Oh, okay.
Telling
I
you
mean,
the
the one to be
importance of
righteous, a good one. A good wife is the best pleasure.
Oh, okay. To have a good wife.
Because the same Prophet says, "Rubba imra'atin iza fatat fa'aha ka'anna nara jahannama fatat." He said there are some women, when they open their mouth to speak to the husband, it's like the hell door has opened. So they have virtuous women, they have good wives, and they have the opposite of that.
So, in other words, your good life, that is described by Prophet Muhammad, is determined by a good wife.
But the Bible says the same thing. He who finds a wife finds a good thing, right?
Yeah. So,
and you find favor with the Lord. Right. What's about this thing about marrying virgin in heaven? Is it true?
That's all complete nonsense, Dennis.
Right.
There's
No, it's not. It's not nonsense. Women in heaven, one of the descriptions of them are that they will all be equal in age, in size, in complexion, and amongst them is they will all be virgin. That's all. So anyone who enters it, any wife you get in there will be what, a virgin?
I don't think that
Even
that
if
was
it's
the
a
question
wife
Dennis was
on earth that
asking.
will be blessed, will be successful, that the both of you will enter there and you are married to her, she's not going to be the wife that you had here. Everything is going to change about her.
I don't think that was the question Dennis was asking.
So that's not nonsense.
Will you still marry her? Will you still be your wife, even though she's in heaven?
If you say marry in what sense? To pay a brother price?
No, but will there be still husband and wife in heaven?
Of course, the Quran said it.
And so,
you enter you to heaven, and you and your wives. Those wives that will be considered, their work will be accepted by Allah, and they must enter paradise. And their husband will be fortunate to enter paradise as well. They're going to be husband and wife.
And the woman will be virgin, and the man
of
will
course.
still be.
Yes, that's the work of Allah. She's not going to be this. Even the men will not be the way we are here. We're going to be different.
The men will be virgin, or they will still be loose, running around.
And you talking about being virgin or not, the happiness for those who love women, every man will be entitled to 4,444 wives.
I'm not trying to laugh.
All right.
So me,
that's a tip of it.
So me, I will have 4,000 plus wives.
4,444 wives. So you have to have an affair with them every day if you want to.
And we're going to live forever.
Forever.
So for eternity.
Eternity, of course.
That's another topic. But we have a caller here who wants to answer the same question from all the way from Australia. Mohammed Salia Dukuly. Mohammed, go ahead.
Let me say thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and I say salam alaikum to my senior brothers who are there. I thank them very much for their contribution. I just want to make a point on the question you talk about the witness. One of the brothers, Imam Turay, he started very well to give you a context they were in. That context is within the time of what they were doing at that time. So the verse is specifically about giving witnesses in terms of financial transaction. The verse talked about in the financial transaction. And there, the whole context is if I'm taking loan from you or giving me a loan, it should be written, compulsorily be written, so have witness to see. If there's no witness, there's no woman witnessing, there should be one man, two women witnessing. Then the scholars interpreted that to be that particular transaction time, most of the time was dominated by men. Women were not into that at the time. It's like many of our places, in your village, when the real bigger economic transactions happening, you do it under the Palava house. I don't think the women who are there participating in that. Few privileged women may be aware of it, but not many people. But men will usually be involved in it. So that's why they talk about that. Not that because the woman is less than a man. In Islam, the principle is straightforward. In the sight of God, we are all equal. Now, context could be differ. For example, between the husband and the wife, you're all equal, but you have different rules to play. Mm-hmm. So there's no way, and no human being on the earth would think about that as an example to say woman is less than a man. That's what I want to say. But I think my brothers there, they're doing a fantastic job. May Allah reward them very well.
Salia Dukuly, Mohammed Salia Dukuly, you are not Imam, your brother the Imam. So who are you?
No, I'm Muhammad Dukuly. My brother is the Imam, and the word Imam is just means somebody who leads. In my own capacity, where I am in my community here in Australia, I'm an Imam. But the moment someone steps in who is ahead of me, that's automatically the Imam. That's what Islam is.
Okay. Thank you.
It's just that everybody has to be. So for as a layman like me, in my own context, I'm my own Imam in my lay corner.
Right.
But the moment that someone else comes in, I'm not an Imam. So it's just that it's a role that needs to be performed.
Yeah.
And then when the right person comes in there, like when the two big brothers there talking, these two people talking, I can't stand in front of them and call myself Imam. No way, I can't do that.
So if one person had to marry 4,000 plus women, right, and the women can do it's not vice versa. That doesn't still talk about.
I'm not waiting for that question. That's a whole different question. That's a different thing discussed. Don't dilute the question with what you were talking about. So, the second point I want to bring regarding the topic you're discussing is that if we talk about the culture and Islam, and someone talk about the names and etc. One thing you should realize is this: culture is dynamic. Whatever we do now, as calling myself Muhammad, well, it's not Arab culture I'm following. I'm actually following the culture my great grandfather was born in, which is Islam. The Islamic culture. When you're Muslim, you don't have any true culture. Islam does not say you cancel what you're doing and carry them, but Islam has some principles that need to be followed. And the principles are this: when you born your child should be given a good name. And a good name, the word father to describe it. The name that he will not be bullied for, the name that people will not make fun out of him, and the name that does not show that he is attributing something to Allah or is against the pleasure of Allah. That's the criteria. For example, you can't name yourself the son of stress, the son of suicide. And then funny, no, you can't do that. Now, if it's a good name people will appreciate, then I'm born in a Muslim community where Muhammad's name will be appreciated. John might not be appreciated in that community. But there are other communities where Muslims are. If you are John in our community, it'll be appreciated because they all comfort, they all understand what it means.
Thank you.
Cultural is contextual.
Thank you. And I like how you try to avoid the question and say I'm diluting the conversation. Because what we're talking about is the role of women, and that's equality. So if one person is getting 4,000 women and the woman is, is waiting for this one man to go around 4,000 before coming to her, how is that equality? But let's leave it there. Let me go back to the Imam.
When you're talking about equality on this earth, thereafter that's a whole different thing we'll talk about. That's what I said. Don't dilute the discussion. No. What you're doing, it was related to other things that probably they didn't prepare to come for.
No.
Talk about what you're talking. We're talking about on earth here. What is the equality do we have here? We're all equal in front of the sight of Allah. The big difference is someone who is more dutiful to Allah is ahead of us. That's the general in every society in that it. Now what's going to be happening hereafter? Well, that's the hereafter. That can be discussion altogether next time. That's what I want to ask my brothers. I beg your focus on the discussion now. Let's not dilute it with the 5,000 women or 100,000 women.
Thank you, but we
all right.
We will not listen to you.
Thank you, Brother Salia. It's not hearing your voice again, Brother Salia.
All right, that was Muhammad Salia Dukuly joining us from Australia.
Yeah.
All right. So again, it goes back to what we were saying.
I think Dennis, I will recommend, because of the time, we go to the last topic. So
that's what I'm coming to do now. So I want Abu Bakr to conclude on the role of women, and then we move on. We got to tie the knot before we leave.
Okay.
Yes. I think there's no contradiction here in terms of the way Islam view women. The brother Salia touched on some aspect of it, and so it doesn't make it any less. It doesn't make it any less important. And so Again, I cited few examples how women are respected in Islam, to the point where a surah or a chapter in the Quran, in the Holy Quran, is named after women to emphasize the role of women in Islam and the role they have played and the role they are expected to play.
All right, that takes us to our next question, our next topic, which is blasphemy. I remember Jesus was killed because of blasphemy. So blasphemy is not new to me. Imam Turay, what is blasphemy and what is the punishment according to the Quran?
You say you remember when Jesus was killed. I say you say because of blasphemy. Blasphemy, from both the biblical and Quranic standpoint, is an act or an expression or action taken against faith or God or his prophet. That's what we call blasphemy. And when it comes to the punishment of blasphemy, there are options. It's not what people see or say. Those who are not Muslim are really saying right now, this person does it, behead them. No, that's not it. In the first place, Islam allows us to respect each and other life, culture, and religion. In one of the verses, he warned us seriously not to speak ill of the gods of the people who don't believe him. He said, at least they will speak ill of Allah too. So if he's guiding us in that manner, do not speak ill of the gods of the people who worship other than me, least they will speak ill of me. Right? So, blasphemy, the punishment that has been considered, or that will be considered in Islam, according to the Islamic legists, will be if someone accepts a religion and leaves the religion, does not mean you have to be held or kill him or her. No. The only way that person will be a target, except after entering the religion, comes out of it because it is a right. Islam says, La ikrah fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. They enter with their will, they come out with their way. The only time the law is looked at, if the person having entered, come out, is ready or is serving to be somebody that will attack that religion, its rituals directly, then of course that person becomes a threat to Islam. If we start from Christianity, if you look in the book of Leviticus 24:16, can you just please put it up for us, please?
Yeah, we'll take time.
Leviticus 24:16. It says, anyone who blasphemes the name of the law will be put to death. Leviticus.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yes, sir.
So let's not just look at just Islam. Let's take it from that and we end with Islam. Leviticus 24:16 speaks about anyone who blasphemes the name of the Lord will be what? Put to death. But now, let us look at the context of Christianity. Blasphemy, as I've explained in Islam and both Christianity, could be the attack of God or the religion or the prophets, right? But Christianity stressed on one major one, a blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. To Christianity, that is what? Unforgivable. When the Quran is telling you in Quran 39 verse 53, say, Ya ibadiya alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim, la taqnitu min rahmatillah, inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. O you my servants who have actually wronged themselves, do not despair from the mercies of Allah, for Allah forgives all sins. And if you look into the book of Matthew 12:32, it says, anyone who speaks against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven, either in this age or the age to come. So it's taken completely, very serious in Christianity as well. It is not only in Islam. But one of the guys, to end off, we end with Mark 3:28. All sins will be forgiven except against the Holy Spirit in terms of blasphemy. Now, what did the Quran tell us? In Surah 6:68, Islam gave us a guide as Muslim, as believer. They said, whenever we see people are ill discussing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are belying him. They don't believe his signs, his revelation. They say, you as a believer Muslim, don't sit with them at that point. Move from there until you can start another topic, then of course you probably may come back to sit with them. Because if you do sit with them, you may be tempted with the devil, by the devil, or forget to join their lecture or their statement unknowingly. Now, one big verse of the whole Quran, our brother normally take against us as Muslim. It's Quran 33, verse 57 to 61. And that is the only one the mainstream look at. That the punishment for those who are fighting Allah, meaning they are blaspheming him and his messenger, and they are carrying on earth mischief, they are spreading mischief. Their punishment is one, should be killed or should be crucified, or their hands and legs should be cut in opposite direction, or they should be what? Expelled from the land. Now let's go back to that verse. Allah says, إِنَّمَا جَزَاءُ الَّذِينَ يُحَارِبُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولُهُ وَيَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا أَن يُقَاتَلُوا أَوْ يُسْلَبُوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفعوا في الأرض ذلك لهم خزي في الدنيا ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عظيم. Now, it is not only when they blaspheme. The only word there is they are spreading mischief on earth, carrying corruption. Then if you look at now, one of the greatest presidents on earth that is carrying mischief on earth now is Netanyahu. But unfortunately, it's 100% backed by his own ally, including America, and England, and the rest of the country. So Allah is underlining purposely, and because somebody spoke against him, that he should be killed. This is those who are fighting Allah, his messenger, and they are carrying mischief. They are spreading evil on earth. Then, of course, when you grab them and they don't repent, this is what should be done to them. So for those who will consider these verses, 23, 5, 57 to 61, that it's meant that if somebody blasphemes against Allah should be killed, that is not really the context Quran is coming from. Thank you.
It's kind of difficult to understand, but I will ask and we'll explain. First of all, like you were quoting the Leviticus, those laws are not practiced anywhere in the Bible. That's why Christ came and did away with the old.
That could be another debate, Mr. Dennis. You could say that why Christ came and died so that you should go. No, because if you look in the book of Isaiah 43:11, it said the soul that sinners shall die. The father will not be responsible for the iniquity of the son. Neither the son will be responsible for the iniquity of the father. The righteousness of the righteous will be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked will be upon himself. So what the essence of Jesus dying? If I still commit sin, I will go to hell, and if I do righteousness, I will go to heaven. So that's another debate, please.
Yeah, no, that's another debate. So
yeah.
So when Christ now is the righteousness, but I don't want us to go into that.
Let's please not go there.
Yeah, so in Christ, we can talk about that, but there is nowhere in the Bible or in Christianity that you have ever seen they say, hey, this person blasphemed, let's stone them. There's no record today.
Yeah.
But here's one thing I wanted to blasphemy before I bring you in. So really, just give me one word and a practical example of blasphemy.
Okay.
When they say, I want Imam to end on that before I bring you in. When you say or speak ill, I don't want you to blaspheme now, but just let me know exactly what when I do it, then it's considered blasphemy. What is it?
I didn't get my phone is so low. I have to come. Come again with a question, please.
Example of blasphemy.
Example of blasphemy.
Yeah.
There are so many examples. They have lighter ones that someone will quote the Quran and say that's nonsense or that's BS. Right? That's blasphemy. Or someone will say no. Christ, Jesus, the Son of Mary, is a son of God. In Islam, it's a blasphemy. Or no, if someone says to Muslim, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and the Quran is telling us, Wala taqulu thalasa, do not say Trinity, intahu, disease immediately. That in Islam is also a blasphemy. So they have classes and they have types.
And what should be done to someone who blasphemes? Stay away from them.
See that?
Someone who blasphemes, what exactly should be done with that person? One of those things is stay away.
If you see them doing it, especially in a degrading manner against God, when they are saying it, you Muslim, the Quran is saying go away.
And not to kill them.
No,
the Quran say,
stay away from them until they can go into a different topic. Yeah, of course, you can come there.
Does the Quran say to hurt anybody who blasphemes? Beating, killing, anything?
See that?
Does the Quran say you should hurt anybody who blasphemes?
I think I mentioned it from the beginning. Yes and no. Okay. If somebody enters into Islam, for some time it was their right when they enter, right? And they leave Islam for some time, it is their right as well to leave because there's no compulsion. Now, that person cannot be killed because they enter and leave. The only way they can be a target to Islam, or Islam can target them, if they enter Islam, leave it, and become a threat to the survivability of Islam.
Like what?
Yes.
Like what? Like how?
In any form and manner.
Example.
Attacking Muslims.
You mean physically, like gun?
It could be physical. It could be ideological, and so forth. Once it will affect and undermine the teaching and practice of Islam, then that person becomes a threat. That's where the Quran or Allah came in the Quran. No, we should not allow that. But if you enter and leave, it's your business to do whatever you want to do.
So that person should be killed.
Of course, if you are a threat to any religion out in Islam, of course, in that manner, then of course you can be targeted.
Let's stay with Islam.
If they grab you and you still be adamant that you want to remain on what you are doing, then of course you have to be getting rid of.
Mr. Dukuly.
Yeah. Like the brother said, blasphemy in Islam, is anything speaking ill of Allah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dukuly. Can you speak a little louder? My phone is very low. I don't know what's happening.
Can you hear me?
Just go out and come back in.
Yeah. I have to come bring my head close before I get.
Dukuly, you are not the issue. Dukuly, the issue is not you.
Okay.
The imam will go out and come back. Then that will be corrected.
Okay.
That phone may be blasphemy.
So
and Salia Douglas says about security. Salia, I don't know what you mean about it's about security. Like, are you trying to protect the president while you kill them, or what is it?
Then it's blasphemy. It's something that you find it in Islam as well as in Christianity and other religions, I think. And so blasphemy, simply speaking, is something speaking ill of the religion. I will give you a very simple example. Like in Christianity, burning the cross is considered blasphemy in Christianity, And so speaking ill of Allah himself is considered blasphemy in Islam. And desecration of the Holy Quran is considered blasphemy. But here's the key thing. Here's the most important thing I think we should talk about here. In Islam, blasphemy is considered a sin committed against Allah and committed against his religion. But Islam does not in any way prescribe any punishment for blasphemy. Not in the Quran, and the only justification extreme people will use is a hadith, is a saying of hadith that people might interpret to mean that if you blaspheme, you can be punished. And even that, majority of the scholars disagree with that interpretation. In other words, in the Quran, there is no punishment prescribed for blasphemy. And the verse that was quoted here, that's one interpretation of it, to include blasphemy. And there are a lot of other interpretations, which I think they are the majority. It does not include blasphemy. Blasphemy is not part of what the verse is talking about, even though others might interpret to mean that blasphemy is part of what the verse is talking about. So in essence, Islam does not consider blasphemy, the Islam did not prescribe any punishment. Instead, Islam consider it to be a sin like any other sin. In fact, it's not considered any part of the major sin, or what we refer to as unforgivable sin. Blasphemy is not one of those. So blasphemy is like any other sin in Islam, where if you repent from it, Allah said you will be forgiven because He is the most forgiving. And so, again, people are usually extreme in their views when they hear about blasphemy, and so to the point where in some countries, they took upon themselves to decree laws where, the punishment for blasphemy is either imprisonment or, to kill you and whatnot. So, if somebody is criticizing Islam and they're not Muslim, what do you do? Do you apply Islamic law on them? I don't know, but I mean, again, like I said, Islam considers it to be sin like any other sin. If you are remorseful, you ask for forgiveness, Allah said He will forgive you. Again, like I said, the only source where people talk about punishment is a hadith, and this hadith is debatable, where many scholars saying that the hadith does not talk about punishment for blasphemy. I can't hear you, Dennis. Can you hear me, Dennis? Good.
Go ahead, Mr. Dukuly. Why you worry about me?
I think yes. Let me just interject. Let me just do a little correction.
Yeah.
Why should Islam or the Quran did not give us any strict punishment for blasphemy? It's true. It's a major sin, a major one. In Islam, we have major sins. We call it al-kaba'ir. The first and foremost is to associate partner of Allah, to worship something other than God, or say God is 2, 3, 4, 5, or so on and so forth. The second one is to take human life, to kill. The third one is to be disobedient to your parents. The fourth one, of course, has to do with blasphemy. Though the punishment Allah threatened that if you blaspheme, there's a grave punishment that is awaiting you. A curse of Allah will be upon you in this earth and the hereafter. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ لَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا. So Allah curses you.
Sorry, Imam.
Prepares for you a grief punishment.
Blasphemy, though.
That blasphemy is part of the kabair.
Yeah,
among
when
the
you
major
say
sins.
إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, that particular verse does not speak of blasphemy.
It's part. Put the verse of Dennis, chapter 33 of the Quran.
It's
Please
very
put it
clear.
up.
إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ
That's correct.
وَرَسُولَهُ.
33, 57 to 61.
Those who transgress against Allah and His Prophet.
Read the
Now,
context and you will understand what it comes from. Surah 33, 57 to 61. What are the verses of now? Blasphemy is amongst the kaba'ir, and there is no argument about that, Mr. Douglas. To be honest,
That's not the point. The point here is Islam did not prescribe
it's a major
any
sin.
punishment.
That's what.
Any
That's
punishment
what I just wanted to correct.
for
Islam did not
blasphemy.
give you any specific punishment for them to kill them or do this. No, Allah curses them and prepares punishment for them in the hereafter and here.
Yeah, and
That's
he
right.
says that it's a sin that you can ask for forgiveness and you will be
Of
forgiven.
course.
If you
Allah said only one sin you will not forgive, which is to shirk.
Exactly.
To associate partner, all other sin can be forgiven.
Exactly. That's why I said it's not an unforgivable sin. That's what I said. It's not an unforgivable sin.
Okay, maybe I heard you differently. That it's not a big sin, or it is.
That's
indeed.
what I said. I said it's not an unforgivable sin. It's like any other sin. If you sin, if you blaspheme, and you seek, you are repentant, and you are sincere in your repentance, Allah will forgive you. Because I think one of the part of the reason is a lot of when you talk about blasphemy, what comes to mind most of the time is when Sulaiman Rushdie wrote his satanic verses. We saw that Iran, what is it? Khomeini issued a fatwa that he should be murdered. That's not Islam. Islam didn't say you should kill them. Islam didn't say you should agree to murder him because he blasphemed. No. I mean, where is that coming from? So you can see why people associate these things to Islam, because the country that issued it is an Islamic country, and the person who said it is the
Ayatollah.
The Ayatollah of that country.
So that there is, I will not enter into that until when we are discussing the sect of Islam. Let me leave that.
It's blasphemy. That was the basis.
When we are discussing Shia Sunni, probably I will come back.
No. I'm not talking about Shia Sunni.
No. You're talking about a specific fatwa that was made by Khomeini.
Yes.
I don't want to go into it because it's like we'll be digressing from the topic. When we are discussing that, inshallah, it will come.
The basis of the fatwa was satanic verses that Salman Rushdie wrote.
I'm not disputing what you are saying, but I don't want to discuss that.
So if
the fatwa was baseless, as you mentioned, I don't want to enter into it until we can discuss the sex, please.
If you're not disputing it, would you accept that it was based on blasphemy?
I don't want to talk about it until when we're discussing the sex.
Brother Turay, it's a yes or no. It's a yes or no question. Was it a blasphemy or not? It wasn't a blasphemy. It's a yes or no question. Was it a blasphemy or it wasn't a blasphemy?
Let's save it when we are discussing the Shia Sunni, because you just mentioned one group, right?
No. I'm not talking about group. I'm talking about the religion as Islam. Whether it's Shia or Sunni, that's not the question.
That's what I'm saying. Please,
the degree that was issued, it was issued by an Islamic country. It was issued by an Islamic country. It was issued by someone who has authority, and the basis for the fatwa was because of the book he wrote, which is satanic verses, and they describe it, they deem it to be a blasphemy, and for that reason, the fatwa was issued.
I think that's a fair point.
We will expatiate on that when we are discussing the sex.
I don't know what is difficult about it.
Well, he doesn't want to answer it, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
I don't want to do it yes or no, that's all.
Allah and his messengers are condemned by Allah and in this world and the hereafter, and he has prepared for them a humiliating punishment. People. And,
so
and as for those who abuse believing men and women unjustifiably, they will definitely bear the guilt of slander and blatant sin.
Yeah.
O Prophet, ask your wives, daughters, and believing women to draw their cloaks.
That's why you're talking about hijab.
In this way, it is more likely that they will be recognized as virtuous and not be harassed.
Yeah.
So then it's enough verse that you just read, you see that Allah, in that verse, he ascribed to himself the punishment for blasphemy. Right. So he is the one who is going to punish. Meaning, like any other sin, whatever you do here, he is the one who's going to punish you. So who are we to say, because you're blasphemed, we should be murdered? Because you're blasphemy, this must happen to you. It's clear there is no prescribed punishment for blasphemy in Islam, period. This is the view of the majority of scholars. This is the view of the majority of Muslims.
And I know though you're about to open, we're not opening until when you're doing the sex. This majority. We'll talk about it, inshallah.
But is there any punishment in the Quran for blasphemy?
I just told you no. The
punishment there is right?
Allah ascribed that punishment to himself.
There's no physical prescription, literal prescription in the Quran to say that this. I said it, right?
So what is the confusion here that people are prescribing punishment for blasphemy? And let me see. I think there are some countries, for instance, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. Blasphemy is a criminal offense, often with harsh penalties, even death in some cases.
That's right. Yes.
Controversial.
Yes.
Then,
And that was what I was talking about, where some countries ascribe to themselves in defining blasphemy and the punishment for blasphemy, where you can be imprisoned for a long time. In some cases, you can be killed.
Turkey, Indonesia, Egypt, the laws, they are inconsistently enforced. And then we have secular and more pluralistic states like Albania, Senegal, Lebanon tend to have a little or no legal punishment for blasphemy. But in other countries, yeah, they have those harsh punishment. So the authority is coming from themselves, not the Quran.
That's right. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is the Hour of Faith. We are discussing the highly debated topics in Islam. Today we are discussing human rights, the role of women, and blasphemy. Imam, I see something on the tip of your tongue.
No. I made a mistake in a reference. I just recollected, so I just want to make it because people are listening. Yeah, I quoted Isaiah 43:11. That was not it. It was Ezekiel 18-20. The soul that sinners shall die. I just want to make that correction.
Yeah. The soul that sinners, that soul shall die. All right. We have your man Salia. It's also one, but let's talk more. So actually, if the sin of blasphemy is not punishable, there is no punishment from the Quran. These countries are, Imam, where are they taking the authority from? They're wrong, right? That's not Islam. They are practicing. That's their own thing.
I won't tell you that they are wrong. I will not say that.
What will you say?
The Quran is structured in a way that you have muhkamat, mutashabihat, until you can know them, until you can know the in total, the inner makings. With that knowledge of the Sharia, I think we discussed this last week. You cannot just outrightly condemn or probably outrightly accept, right?
Why not?
I'm coming. Because it's not everyone that is clothed with that knowledge. Knowledge, where yours stop, someone begins. I think you remember me mentioning last week that in a doctor, everyone can be called doctor, or in different fields. You have the gynecologist, the dentist, and so on and so forth. The same is in religion, Islam. You can master the Quran, you can master the Hadith. Some there that's just history, some is the jurisprudence. So you can tell me the one who masters the jurisprudence can be equated to the one who just memorized Hadith, right? So it's not something you just say yes or no. No, I don't do that.
What's your point, Imam?
It's what I've just expressed.
But Imam,
before you say this person is wrong, when you're backing from the Quran, either the Hadith or from the Islamic jurisprudence, but not just an opinion.
Yeah,
just opinion that the person is wrong. No, I don't do my religion or Islam that way.
But Imam, this doesn't even require any of that. It was a simple incident where a person who said they were no longer Muslim, they wrote a book. And this
Can I
book,
ask you a short question? So we just put this one in.
This book.
You mentioned Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan.
Yeah, I'm just telling you.
It's a major sin that they should kill them, assuming someone does it in Saudi or Iran and Pakistan.
Yeah,
and their life was taken. I'm coming. And their life was taken.
Let me learn. There's
and
a
the same
reason
Quran
why
is telling you anyone who wrongfully takes a single soul is as though you've killed the entire world. So assuming if it happened there, blasphemy, and those who gave the decree took that person's life, it means that we go to hell. Can you just see that?
That's why I just told you, and Dennis just pointed out to you the inconsistent application of that particular punishment. There's a reason for it. There's a reason why it's inconsistent between among Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. Because, like I said, there is no prescribed punishment for it in the Quran. Period. This is not something that is arguable. This is something, whether you are a theologian, whether you are expert in whatever, it is clear that there is no punishment prescribed by the Quran for blasphemy. With that said, the category of the sin is being determined. We know that. But and again, I ask you specifically, I said, this country issued a fatwa, and the fatwa was solely, entirely based on the fact that this person wrote a book and he blasphemed Prophet Muhammad in that book. And based on that blasphemy, this country issued a decree. This is not about specialty in Sharia. It's very plain, it's very simple and straightforward. So it's not. I mean, it's not something that is even debatable.
Thank you.
As you're trying to describe.
Yeah, our man Turay Dukuly from Australia is back. Turay, you're alive.
Hello. Thank you very much for bringing me on. I think the two speakers are making a lot of sense, and I would agree with Dukuly in this instance. There's a lot of confusion. He's spoken about one confusion. The second part about it is what I want to talk about. Where when people talk about blasphemy, they link it to when someone leaves Islam, which is very wrong understanding. And the hadith is very popular. Everybody knows about it and talk about the killing. The hadith said, I'll just say the meaning. It said, Muslim, you're not allowed to spill someone's blood except in 3 categories. Muslim blood is not supposed to be spilled except in 3 categories. 1, the elderly man who follow other people, women. When you kill someone, you kill for blood to be spilled. Third one, they say al-mufarriqul. They said in English, said the person who left the religion, and then he become a threat to them.
That's it.
The person who left the religion in a particular context, and then he become a threat to them. Then the scholars interpreted that. Majority of people say this was in the times of, let's for example, when the war was fighting. Even now in this world is happening. Someone who is with the KGB, a very good person, understand everything there. He leaves KGB and he come and want to join the CIA. Definitely he'll be a target because when he left something, he bringing on something to other people at the time when people are standing up against each other. That was the context in which he came. And people now think that they misinterpret that. How can you say someone leaves Islam, killed them, every other thing you say there's no force? So at the end, it's concluded that this is about the security. If we are together in the times of war, we are together, you are with us. You left us, and you going, you're leaving us going, become a threat for us to be killed. You can be targeted and be killed for that. That's a very natural law.
And actually, Brother Salia, you just said something. The word used is treasonous act. Treasonous act, meaning you have left the war, and you have revealed a secret that is going to be detrimental to the community. So the word was specific, treasonous.
Yes.
So I'm just buttressing your point there. That's what that is. Yes.
I agree with you. That's the point we're trying to emphasize. That this was about security. When people take that, it expanded. But the general rule is what Mr. Dukuly said, that there's no punishment assigned for someone who do blasphemy. In fact, you can do in Islam, it's understood that you can do blasphemy even every day in day out you can do it, but you just need to come back by saying Yashara la ilaha illallah.
Yes.
And you say the kalma, you come back.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's no punishment for it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 6 minutes to close, so I want us to. But thank you, Mr. Dukuly, for what you added. This topic we even scratched the surface yet, so it continues. We probably take a break and bring in the other religion, and then. But let's Imam. Let's conclude.
Well, first and foremost, I would just like to be thankful to Allah for the opportunity given me to be alive, sound, and make this jihad. Because what we are doing, all of us, is a jihad. We are struggling spreading the message.
In jihad too?
Of course, you are making jihad. We are spreading the truth. Whatever that we say ignorantly, we ask Allah to forgive us. And whatever that we do that we commensurate with His pleasure, may He reward us. And finally, I would say we are always prepared to do what we are doing and do more for the sake of ourselves, our family, our brethren, be a Muslim or non-Muslim alike, so that all of us can be on a safe path. On that note, we say peace be unto you and assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Boakai Dukuly.
Thank you, Dennis, for this opportunity. I want to say thank you very much to my brother Turay. This was a very lively debate, and I think nothing personal, just so you know. We are all here trying to educate and elevate whatever we can do in our communities so that people can be better informed and knowledgeable. So I want to thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure being here.
I want to thank both of you for your time, engaging in this jihad.
Yes, it is.
My mom said having to say that.
Jihad.
Because of the show, I now know that jihad doesn't mean holy war.
No.
Yes.
We are spreading the message. And the goal here is not to confront anyone. The goal while we're doing this is to provide the teaching, the enlightenment, so that we as Liberians, this is towards building a more vibrant country where we understand each other, we know one another. Because if you don't know someone, you become suspicious of that person. You become to stereotype that person. And based on those stereotypes, those false beliefs, you take action, because sometimes you take in, and then when you react, you don't even know why you are reacting, but it's embedded in your subconscious of what you feel and think about the people. We do that against religion. We do that against different ethnic groups. All we do is stereotype because we don't know. So what we are trying to accomplish here is so that we explain, so we know, so that whatever decision you are making it from a position of an informed and educated viewpoint. And if I can join our ancestors tomorrow, we should all be proud that we have taken a step in educating and elevating and promoting all things Liberia. On that note, I want to say again, thanks to our viewers, those who even will watch later. Let's keep doing it and let's keep sharing knowledge. We don't close the broadcast here without playing the song that says we are all Liberians. You can be a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, adherent to traditional African beliefs, whoever you are, we are all Liberians. What we all need to do is to do our very best to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Have a good night and God bless you.
Thank you, Dennis.
We are Liberians.